It was cloudy the rest, but I was running out of power, so because we had like like almost cloudy all day days in a row, so I
Mm.
really needed some sunshine today.
To be honest, man, like here with my eye being all screwed up, I've really just not wanted the sun to come out at all. Because like, I mean, even with like some heavy cloud cover, my poor eyes are like, or my poor eye is like, I can't handle this.
Right, you want total cloud cover.
Mhm.
All right.
All right, so also, just letting you know, we're doing this live today.
I saw that. I'm bringing up the pop out chat to put on the
Epic.
same window as Discord right now, just in case someone shows up in there.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, okay,
So now I got the pop out chat from YouTube on top of my Discord.
epic. And now I just need to go to OBS and get it switched over to the proper scene view so they can see both of us. And epic. All right. So there we go. And I've got a browser up so we can show off anything that we talk about, find super interesting, whatever. So how has your week, Matt, been?
It's been all right. I've when it was cooler, I started to catch up on some things that the heat was
Keeping you from doing?
keeping me from doing.
So, what have you been catching up on work wise? Have you been finishing up the Earthship?
No, I've been catching up on transplanting stuff, and you want to do that during cloudy days anyway, not when the sun's beating down.
Yeah, yeah. So, transplanting. I assume you're talking about your garden.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, so, since we're talking about a garden here for a second, what are the favorite two things that you got in your garden?
I actually like to grow lettuce because you can actually you do the cut and come again lettuce.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then have a nice fresh salad every night, but is one of my favorite things that I don't have going on right now.
Uh, Also, isn't lettuce good? Because I think isn't it lettuce and spinach will both survive complete freezes, like when the ground
It
freezes
de-
over.
it depends. I think spinach is better for it.
Okay, okay. Anything else you've been up to this week?
Um, Not a whole lot.
Okay.
Just
You,
streaming trying to stream every day.
mhm. Speaking of streaming and stuff, how's it going in Morrowind?
All right. I think I finally that's one of the ones where it shows up way dark trying to stream it in OBS, and I've been tweaking the color correction settings on it, and I think I got it to the point where I better just leave it alone.
You having to bump up that gamma like crazy?
And then you got to bring up the contrast to compensate for the weirdness of the gamma.
Hmm. Well, to be honest, so we'll get to like more Linuxy stuff eventually, but um, so I assume you've seen the video on my eye and what's going on
Yeah.
there. Okay, for anybody who watches this and you're looking at me and you're like, "Holy shit! Like, what type of fight did he get in?"
Hmm.
It wasn't that epic. I didn't get into a fight. That would be a much better story if I had. But really, what happened is I was wearing my contacts and then it started hurting, and I assumed it was just I I had been vaping pretty hard on a Delta 8 cart, so I figured it was just like my eyes being dry and like a little itchy. So I took the contacts out, and then they stayed itchy and like real watery, both of them for a while. Because whenever you take out contacts, they or have you ever had contacts before?
Nope.
Okay. Well, then you don't understand the pain of taking out contacts. When you take them out, especially if they've been in for quite a while, like I normally don't ever sleep in my contacts, but the day that this happened, the night before, I had slept in them, so my eyes were just dry. Took them out. They both stayed watery for a while. This one was hurting like a mofo, but I fell asleep. I figured it would be better in the morning. Nope. Went and got checked, and it turned out I had an infection in my eye. And if I hadn't have gone to the doctor and just let it sort itself out, which it hurt way too bad for me not to go see a doctor. Like I have a very high tolerance to pain. Like my pain threshold is pretty high. I can handle a lot. Only because when I was a kid, I went through a lot of surgeries and like I can handle a lot of pain. But this was like it was unbelievably painful. But I went in and they were telling me like, yeah, like most people with this are already in seeing a doctor because they're like the first day, most people don't even make it that night. It
Right.
hurts too much. But I was able to fall asleep. But anyway, they were like, yeah, this is something you don't want to leave untreated. It can lead to like permanent eye loss or vision loss without like, or the other option is what was it? It's like a corneal transplant or something like that, where they give you a new cornea.
Oh, joy.
Yeah, yeah. So the guy was like, yeah, just here we go. What they gave me is so every hour, speaking of which, I just put them in and I need to set my timer. Because every hour I have to put in 2 specially formulated, very high potency antibiotic eye drops every hour until tomorrow. And then tomorrow it might change. I'll probably have to get a different type of eye drop that I don't have to put in as much, which will be awesome because it's been really annoying having to put in eye drops that sting real bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually don't feel good putting in eye drops.
Oh no, and it's like much worse than like I mean Visine. Like you put in Visine, it's like oh that's not that bad. Like yeah, I mean something strong like I've got Roto here. Like I don't know if you ever used these before, but these eye drops, they're like Visine, but they're a lot more effective. Like if you have like a really bad red eye or something like that, and it's real scratchy, Roto helps a lot. But it stings much worse than Visine. These do not compare to the eye drops I have to put in. Like with one of them is pretty okay. The second one hurts so bad. But yeah, so that's what I'm having to do, and hopefully this eye will get to the point where it doesn't look like I got into an epic fight here before too long. But other than that, I don't know if you saw my live stream either, but I've checked out Rat Poison, the window manager.
I had heard of it.
Yeah, it is. I really like it. It's very interesting. I did not think I was going to like it. Speaking of window managers and stuff, I know that you like to use desktop environments, but have you ever tried a tiling window manager before?
No, I have not.
Okay. It's one of those things where like I always recommend people to try them, but it's also a thing of like if it doesn't sound interesting to you, you probably shouldn't try it. Like you just I mean, it's the same thing as like with the people who try to convince you to use Emacs. It's like, yeah, it might be cool, but if you already have a text editor that you like using, you don't need to really try Emacs. You're just going to turn Emacs into the text editor of your choice anyway. So why? I know there are going to be people in the comments who are like, I love Emacs and you're definitely wrong for saying that, but whatever.
Everyone's allowed their own opinion. We used to respect each other's opinions, even if they were different. And before 2021 happened.
Yeah. Speaking of 2021 and 2020, I mean, I gotta say, hands down, 2020 and 2021 have just been the most shit years. Like, period. As far as I know, everyone has had a bad time the past couple of years. Like, I mean, some people have like, yeah, you might be working at home now and you like that. That's cool. But let's be honest. There's been so much shit happen on top of just COVID the past 2 years where it's not, as far as I like, most of the people that I've watched have had like just bad shit happen the past 2 years. Like I watch Your Mom's House, that podcast. And so it's ran by 2 comedians, Tom Segura and his wife Christina Pashitsky, and they've both been severely injured the past 2 years. Tom like destroyed his like arm playing basketball, and then that's on top of all of the COVID shit that they've had to deal with as a business and all of that. Like everyone has not had a good past couple of years, and if you had, thank your lucky stars, because like you are 1 in a million right now. But so when it comes to Linux, have you done anything new on the Linux front?
Well, you see the pink blanket behind me has actually been it's been doing pretty good for a green screen effect on my streams, on my last few streams.
I noticed that, and at first I was like I hopped into the live stream and I was like, holy shit, like you've gotten a green screen. And then you told me it was just a blanket. And when you told me that, I guess you like brushed it or something. Because just for a second, I could see it pop in like this magenta. Like,
I have to use more lighting, but hey,
hey, it's worth it. It's worth it. Like a lot of the times, the green screen, like to me, um, like when you're just doing gaming stuff, like I mean, like what you're doing, you're live streaming yourself playing games. Having a green screen, it keeps you in frame without having anything distracting behind you.
right.
Um, the
Well,
only reason oh yeah,
I had a green tarp, but it was shiny, and so I tried to
ooh,
use that, and it just didn't work at all. But then I saw magenta was in the options in the default options, and it's
mhm.
like, well, hell, let me try this. It worked out pretty good.
Oh, now I know I don't know if you've tried it, but in OBS, what you can do too is you can actually set the color, so you can take like an eye picker and choose it.
I tried, you know what? I tried setting the color to closer
Hmm.
to a closer color of this blanket than the stock magenta
Hmm.
default, and I just made it worse.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I've done that too. I chose the color of my green screen, and my green screen apparently, because of the way my lighting was like the top half of it is better lit, so it was more accurate. The bottom
Hmm.
part was not. So like for some reason, again, for me, I had to use like the default green worked out better. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Just one of those weird things that hey. Also, if you're going to be doing stuff like green screen and stuff like that, like I don't know about you, but I've always found it to be one of those things where like if you put in like 6 hours of effort into getting your green screen looking great, the outcome is not. It doesn't show 6 hours of effort. Like
Right.
you spend the first 10 minutes, you get the green screen looking all right, and then you just move on.
Right.
People don't care, especially if you're not streaming in like 4K. Like you're not Linus
Right.
Tech Tips. No one really cares. Like that's
No,
one thing that I. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just streaming 720p, which is what my upload speed can handle. It can't
No.
handle more than that anyway.
Well, now I'm doing 1080p and stuff again, but no one. So for I want to say about 5 days, I was uploading in all 720p, and no one said a thing. No one commented, said anything. I didn't have anyone mention
No
it.
one even noticed, huh?
Yep, no one noticed. But I'm back in 1080p just because it doesn't make any sense for me to go to 720p. Just, I mean, YouTube, for one, my internet can handle it. I have the
Right.
equipment to do 1080p, and YouTube takes care of transcoding for me when it goes to Odyssey. So I'm not saving anything by not doing it. Um,
Yeah, I get 4 megabits per second up, and it takes just over 3 megabits per second, or
you know,
3,000. Yeah,
you
three
could,
megabits per second to
yeah,
do the 720p. There's no way I'd be
yeah.
dropping frames all over the place trying to do 1080p just from the internet connection.
Yeah, you could probably do 1080p, but just like you said, you're going to have at the very least you're going to be dropping at least 1 or 2 frames here and there, at least pretty free, even with a cutting the bit rate as low as you can, and then
Yeah.
setting the
One thing I did find
setting.
out that was setting the bitrate higher
Mhm.
did not give me better 720p streams. It actually got better as I set it because I think I got it set for 3,000 now, and it ends up uploading a little like at 31, 3,200.
Mhm.
And as I set it higher, it gets worse for some reason. It was weird.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I
That's
set
it
it,
is weird.
it was weird.
Well, actually, see, here's the thing: you might be getting like or supposed to get 4 megabits, but you might actually be getting slightly under that. So when you bump it
Right,
up, you're reaching the max of your actual internet. That could
right.
be it. Now, I am so sorry for everybody who's watching this because I'm definitely not going to edit this even afterwards, but I have to go blow my nose super bad. So if you got something interesting to talk about, go ahead and dive in right now.
Well, when he comes back, I've had a lot of people from other streams that I watched that are use StreamYards, and most of the reason they use StreamYards is because it's easy to add and remove guests on the fly. So I've been trying to figure out the best ways to do that in OBS to free these people from.
Much better.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah. What were you
Okay,
doing while I was gone?
I'll repeat this over again. I've have friends of mine on YouTube that are using Streamlabs,
Mhm.
and they're paying for it, and they're just getting crappy streams out of it. And one of the main reasons they keep using Streamlabs is adding and removing guests is real easy, and they don't know how to do that in OBS. And I've been looking into it, and it's not doesn't seem too complicated,
Mhm.
but
Yep. You're
but there's some, but if you're going to add and remove guests on the fly, the way we're doing it right now is probably not the best way to do it, because the crops would be messing up as
yeah.
people are coming in and out. So from what I've seen so far in my research, and unfortunately because it's Microsoft, but it looks like Skype with the NDI plugin is probably the easiest way to do it on the fly.
Yeah. I have no idea about how to set it up in OBS. The one thing that I will say, I'm glad you brought up Streamlabs and paying for it. I will never do business with Streamlabs ever again, because back in the day I used to use them. I really liked it because of the overlay system and everything like that. When this channel was, just for those of you who don't know this channel was originally a gaming channel. I know, if we're being honest, a very shitty one at that. But it was originally a gaming channel, and I used Streamlabs, and then I wanted to pay for them. I signed up for the Prime membership. They charged me twice. So I got charged $19.99 once, and then again 2 days later. I called my bank because back then I could not get in touch with Streamlabs. There was just no way to do it. Their website didn't have a chat. There was no number that I could call. I could submit a ticket, and I did, but I didn't get a message back the next day. And I was pretty upset about it. So I called my bank and I'm like, look, cancel it. I haven't used Streamlabs since I paid for it. So like, I haven't even used the service, so just cancel it. They were like, okay. Like, the only question they asked me is like, have you been able to contact them? I'm like, I've reached out. I still haven't heard anything. I'm gonna go ahead and preface this with, I never heard anything back until my bank completely like ended it, and a week later I got an email. So it doesn't matter. Like they didn't get back to me, but I canceled the payment, and then I considered it all done. I was like, they double charged me, and I'm not interested in doing business with a company that can't manage billing someone. Then a month and a half later, after they've already put so the way they canceled is the bank would cancel it, and then they put a merchant block on them so that same merchant can't charge me again. They changed their merchant ID so that they could charge me a month later. So a month and a half later, I got charged again for 2 times for Streamlabs.
That sounds shady.
Yep. Real shady. Real slim shady. So I'll never do business with them again. They make OBS really simple, but I'll never purchase anything from Streamlabs again. Also, they don't have native, or as far as I know, they still don't have a native.
So you're talking about Streamlabs.
Yeah. What were you talking about?
These guys are complaining about StreamYard.
Oh, StreamYard. Oh, okay.
But it's also another paid service.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that.
And the main reason they're using it is it makes it easy to bring guests in and out, and they don't know how to do that in OBS. So I've been looking into that.
I mean, I will say one of the things, it's not as elegant as other solutions, but to be honest, especially with a lot of the way podcasts are done, you're normally going to have the webcams for the guest, host, all that stuff. You're gonna have them in OBS, normally a pop-out window, and then the stuff that you're talking about, you should probably have a web browser stuff open. So the way that we've been doing it here lately, where we have pop-out window on one side and then a browser on the other for anything that we're going to be talking about, like, I don't know, it just makes sense. It's not like super elegant and like hyper professional, but again, if you're watching my channel, Jeff's, like, the whole point of our channels are not to be hyper professional. They're to be what YouTube was like. What made YouTube great in the OG days was just people being people and sharing their opinions. I think that's what made YouTube great. Now it's become this commercialized, like, where people starting off with a channel like that are doing stuff like I'm doing aren't being personable. They're trying to be like professional throughout their stuff. And it's like, I mean, that you can do that. You can be the Linus Tech Tips of whatever your niche is, but I don't know, like it takes away from the, to me, it takes away from the cool aspect of what makes videos great.
Well, in my case, I could run 2 monitors and have all the OBS and YouTube stuff on one monitor and just my stream on the other. But I'm on a solar situation, and is the extra power draw worth it? And to me, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep everything on one monitor. If they see me start the stream and see me stop the stream or go to so what?
Yeah, I think that's the real question, is not whether or not it, like, your stream would be better with it. It's, does anyone care? Like,
Yeah.
Does anyone care that your like, that again goes back to like the resolution thing. No one cared that I was uploading in 720p. Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter. Like, the funny thing is like when I went out to get like all of this stuff for behind me and everything, I was considering like, should I get or should I also get a better camera? Like, I was considering getting something that was still 1080p but had a much better lens in it, but it would just look better. And I mean, for me to get something like that affordably, like, I have a Cam Link, so that's like $100 right there. But that's where you can plug in like a DSLR camera to your computer, right, and use it like essentially as a webcam. For me to get in it, the cheapest good camera was going to be something like a GoPro. And that was going to cost me, to get a good GoPro that output clean HDMI, it's going to cost me about $300. And does anyone care? Does it make my videos better? No, it doesn't.
No.
It would just be something to like improve quality that, again, maybe one person would be like, oh, now I'll watch his videos.
Yeah,
And that,
right.
and again, that one person is really weird. Like, I've never watched a video where I've been like, oh man, I would subscribe, but it's only in 720. Like, that's never happened to me. I mean, you got to be also a pretty shallow person for that to be like what is required for good
I have
content.
seen people complain, but hey, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, there are those people.
I guess if you're in your living room on an 80-inch freaking big screen, I guess it might look bad, but I don't know.
At that point, I mean, still,
I don't get it.
If you're watching on an 80-inch screen, you have to realize you're the like 1%. Like,
right.
It's the same thing as the people who complain, like, you know, they try out something like
but
Ubuntu.
We're on Linux. We are the 1%.
Exactly.
2%. We're the top 1 or 2%. Well, they look at us as the bottom 1-2%, but we don't have to look at it that way.
No, we are the top 1%, man. Like, I mean, if you think about it, when it comes to like Windows, if you're using Windows or Mac, like, all right, like let's just describe the 3 operating systems. You give me your opinion on the 3 operating systems, I'll give you mine. My opinion on the 3 operating systems is this: Windows is a computer or an operating system for those who just don't want to learn anything about the system at all, but they want every piece of software that they could ever possibly need to just run. They don't care about crashing. They don't care about annoying updates or anything like that. They want all the software to at least be available to them. That's Windows. If you want Mac, like if you're using a Mac, the reason you use a Mac is because it looks good. Like, whether you hate the UI and how it's laid out and everything, it's visually appealing. It's a very nice desktop environment. But it is the Fisher-Price, like, it's the adult Fisher-Price computer. It's a good looking device that you can do more complex stuff in it, but it's really just meant to look good, and that's really about it. It's supposed to be a design piece, just like a Fisher-Price.
They do have good integration between all their different devices.
Yes.
And their software is pretty optimized because it's just one, there's not a whole bunch of different hardware they have to optimize for. They can optimize for specific hardware, and so they do a good job of that, to give credit where credit's due. But it's a walled garden, and you will do it the Apple way. You won't do it the way that makes sense to you.
And that's what I mean by it's a Fisher-Price computer. Like it is the adult Fisher Price computer because it's made to be extremely easy to use and to understand. And I mean that's it. It's the Fisher Price of computers. Again, like you were saying, the ecosystem for it's fantastic, way better than Windows. But to me, that's also a gripe because like even though it's amazing, if you go into that walled garden, like it's so amazing that you're like once you're in there because everything's so tightly knit integrated, like it's so flawless and easy to use all those products together that as soon as you say this week I'm going to try an Android phone, I mean, even though that Android phone's awesome and you might really like it, because it's no longer tightly integrated into that whole ecosystem, almost everything outside of the ecosystem is no longer an option because you've gotten used to how the world works inside of your Fisher Price world. You know, like that's it. But so that's Mac. And then when it comes to Linux, Linux is the operating system where you can do like it's a true computer. It is your
Right.
computer. Anything you want to get done in it, you can get done in it. And then also, people might debate me here on this, but Linux makes more advanced computing a lot easier. Like if you want to modify Windows or Mac to change the look of it, good luck, brother. You're gonna have a shitty ass time. Now, if you want to customize the way Linux works or
Oh,
looks,
it's easy.
easy as hell. Like, I mean, and even if you don't know how to even approach something, maybe 30 minutes of Googling, you now understand how to do it. That's that would be my breakdown of the three operating systems and what they're for. Do you want to elaborate on that any? Like, do you have some differing opinions?
I had some icon themes that were broken in
Mm-hmm.
that just were that were broken in XFCE. A couple icons didn't just show up,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me longer than I should have to figure out how to Google it. But I finally did figure out how to debug the panel because the
Yeah.
panel was one like most of the places you can find. Most of the places you can right click on it and just pick another icon, but the panel was a little weird, and it took me longer than it should have, but I did figure out how to debug the panel, and it was just a simple issue of the panel was looking for a different icon name than
Mm-hmm.
what the icon that was supposed to be there was, and that was real easy to fix once I
Yeah.
figured out how to debug the XFCE panel.
And that's one of the good things. Like the old debate of well, if you're on Windows, you're more likely to get help. That debate to me is just the most asinine like debate ever because yes, there are more people using Windows, but like let's
When
be
I
honest.
was when I was on Windows, I'd find a whole bunch of answers that didn't work.
Exactly.
And to find the answer that actually did work was was horrid.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost
Yeah.
impossible.
I mean, after you've tried like 40 different options, then you find it and it works. Like, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, when it comes to Windows,
That
yeah,
was
you'll
just my
get.
experience. I don't know
Well,
if everyone has that experience, but that was mine.
I did. I shared your experience. It was awful. Like, you always get plenty more responses on Windows related issues. But, I mean, when you think about it, yes, more of the world is using Windows, but the amount of people that are knowledgeable about the entire system uh, on Windows is much lower than on Linux. On Linux, the odds that you're going to get somebody who has knowledge elsewhere, like about the system, other than the one area that they specialize in,
Mhm.
is much greater than on Windows. Like on Windows, you'll probably get if you're asking some weird issue about the system, most of the people who are going to respond to you are people who like maybe they do like heavy work with like Substance Painter and like advanced 3D graphics, and they don't know jack shit about how to like run terminal commands in Windows. They've never even seen the terminal, and they don't.
Although it does exist.
Exactly. But then again, Windows Terminal is such a beast to use. No one really wants to use like. Why would you use the terminal in Windows? I have no idea. Um, other than to maybe run a tree command to get all of your like directories, like maybe. But then again, almost like there's no incentive to use the terminal in Windows 95% of the time. There are some times when it comes in handy, but much less than on Linux. On Linux, you're meant to use the terminal for most of your things if you want it to be fast.
Right.
That's also another thing. Like you're a person who you enjoy graphical environments, and I would say on Linux, even though you don't have to use the terminal, there are certain cases where even in graphical use cases, it's faster to use the terminal, and also sometimes it's just easier.
There are definitely some cases where it's easier. Take YouTube DL, for instance.
Yeah.
There is a graphical user interface you can add for YouTube-DL. Why? It is so easy to use in the terminal. Why would you even consider a graphical user interface for that app?
And let's be honest,
I'm someone that likes the GUI.
Yeah. But, and I think that's a good point, because like a lot of people come into Linux and they're like, oh, I don't want to use the terminal. That's fine. Don't use it. You don't have to. There is no reason that you have to use the terminal unless you chose Arch as your first distribution, which then we have more problems to discuss about your opinions.
If you're really sadistic, you could start with Gentoo.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you really hate yourself, like dive straight into hell, man. You can do whatever you want. But I mean, when it comes to the terminal, you don't have to use it. But a lot of the times, I think when it comes to terminal commands, a lot of new Linux users, the reason they're scared is they haven't yet heard or found in documentation or had someone tell them the beautifulness that is either a -help command or the man command. Like load up the manual or the help page for whatever terminal program you're going to use. And like the amount of people that just genuinely don't understand that's there for, I mean, you'd be amazed the amount of programs that have a manual page. Almost all of them have a manual.
All of them, yep.
Yeah, there are very few out there that you can find that don't have. Like, as far as I know, even Lolcat has a manual page for how to use it. So, I mean, you can do anything with. By the way, if anyone doesn't know what Lolcat is a program that you can pipe stuff into in the terminal. Like, let's say I ran, I don't know, C Matrix, which is like the Matrix stuff like you see in the movies coming down your screen. If I was to pipe that into Lolcat, it would come out with a whole bunch of like rainbow colors. And that's what Lolcat does. It just adds a rainbow color to whatever you pipe into it. So it's a very simple program. It's normally just used for fun. There's no practical reason to use Lolcat. As far as I know, I've never seen a practical use case for Lolcat. Yeah, so that's about it when it comes to terminal programs. They're super easy.
And even like installing software, there was one time I was installing Ubuntu for a neighbor to check out because they were complaining about how Windows was so slow. And I was installing the software from the software center using the GUI. And I finally got frustrated with it. I mean, this is just ridiculous. This thing's just in the way. I just opened up terminals. Sudo apt install, blah, blah, blah. Because it was just like, it really did like make things take 10 times longer to use the GUI in that case. Yeah. If you already knew the name of the package, if you didn't know the name of the package and have to search for it, that's one thing. But okay, I know I'm going to install VLC. I know I'm going to install, restricted extras, which they confused me this last time because they changed it. It's not restricted extras anymore. It's restricted add-ons now. So that gave me a little bit of a hiccup last time. But but for if you know the name of the package, get that GUI out of the way for installing software.
Yeah, and that's one thing that not a lot of people talk about. Like, even though you can just use the GUI for doing stuff like updates and installing packages, it is slower. Like, especially if you have to do a lot of updates, it is much, much slower in the GUI. But let's be honest, if you are scared of the terminal, it's not like it's going to be nearly as long and as annoying as a Windows update.
Right.
Now, I will preface that with, in Fedora, it's a little bit different. If in Fedora, if you don't update your stuff through the actual terminal and do it through the software center, there's a good chance, like if anything meaningful with the OS is updated, you're going to have to actually, like, it's going to tell you need to restart your computer, and it's going to do like a Windows update, which is really weird inside of the Linux space that it does that. But let's be honest, if you're somebody who's coming over and you're brand new to Linux, that probably isn't even going to be weird to you. Like, that's just something you're used to.
Well, basically, if it's not updating the kernel, you don't need to restart usually.
Well, and see, here's the
Usually,
thing. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, even on most distribution, if there's an update to the kernel, most of them want you to restart. But you can, like, don't have to right away. You can keep on using the system for as long as you want, restart whenever you want.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you don't have to. It's probably a good idea to, but you don't have to. And that's sort of the annoying part about Windows is you don't even have that option. Well, and on Mac, because if you're going to update your Mac, it's going to force it to turn off too. So like on both of them, like if you're updating, you have to turn it off. You don't have the option. Like if you're doing something critical, Windows just tells you, well, boy, you're shit out of luck. Your thing's going to crash. We need to do an update. It's gotten better from what I've heard on Windows about like stopping and you allowing it to push it off or doing the update and it not just forcibly restarting your computer. The people who tell me that it's gotten better also preface that with, it's gotten better. That doesn't mean it doesn't still happen. Which is great to hear, because I'm like, if my computer, like if I was editing a video that, like, let's say I was editing this podcast and like for some reason there was a whole bunch of different parts of it that I had to cut out, and it was like this long, like, you know, like let's say this podcast went on for like 4 hours and it's this big large project, and my computer just restarted in like towards me being done with it and I hadn't saved. I can't imagine just being okay with that. Like, and that just being part of my daily life using my computer. Like, no, that's unacceptable, period. And there are businesses like that. That's what blows me away about businesses. There are businesses that this shit is just part of their daily, like their IT department has to deal with this on a daily basis. Like somebody's computer just randomly crashing or deciding to do an update. Like my mom was like, I think this was like 3 or 4 days ago. She was like 20 minutes late to work because she turned her computer on and it had to do an update. And she couldn't like postpone it towards the end of the day. It had already done it. Like while apparently before she clocked out in the background, it started the update. And so when she turned it off and turned it back on, it was doing the update, and it took 20 minutes for it to finish, which to me, that's another thing. Like 20 minutes for an update, like, Jesus, that is so long. Like, how? What are you doing? Like, are you like, even when I have an update to Blender, to like even a big update to Blender, like that's done in like no time, and that's a 3D program. How in the what are you updating? Like even the kernel's not. Good God. Right. Like, but yeah, yeah. Even the kernel or something's not going to take 5 minutes. Yeah, and it's a monolithic kernel. Like everything's in there. If you have to update the complete thing, like that's a big update. And that's done. Like, I mean, I've updated my kernel the past week a couple times. Takes like, I mean, like what, 48 seconds, something like that. Like, I don't know. It's ridiculous. But like me and her, like, because she came and got me. She's like, hey, so my computer's having to do an update. Because like, every time our computer does an update, we always laugh about it because it's always in the middle of work. Always. Like
always in the middle of what?
Of work. Like
right.
And that to me is like her IT department. Like so where we live, her IT manager lives like literally like across the street from us. So like me and him know each other, and like me and him cut up all the time because of the shit that he has to deal with. And one of the things, like his company, they're so big that like they use Linux on some specific servers, but they have one person like regionally who manages those servers because they're unwilling to train other people to use it. And it's the funniest thing because he was talking to me. He's like, it's those servers, like I know how they work. Like it's easier to manage those than what I have to deal with, because the problems that I have to deal with are always random and, you know, caused by something Microsoft is doing. He's like, yeah. So I don't understand how a lot of people get by with.
So they got one guy that can manage a whole region of their Linux servers, but they need a local guy for all the Windows stuff. What does
Yeah,
that say?
exactly. That's the whole point. They got one dude to manage, and one dude to manage two servers that are they're both like, you know, across the nation, and he can manage them remotely, and they need the you know, this guy to manage their department because of how much shit goes wrong with Windows. But yeah, I mean, this is divulged into us just shitting on Windows. But I mean, I don't think anyone's opposed to that here on this channel. Shitting on Windows should just be a natural part of our day. Am I right? So when's the last?
I've been away from Windows long enough. I've pretty much gotten over it.
Well, okay, so that's actually what I was going to ask you. When's the last time that you used Windows?
Windows XP.
Oh.
So like 2012.
Hold the fucking phone. You're telling me you missed the glorious days of Vista, Windows 8, 8.1.
I did use Windows 8 for one day. When I when I got that i5 laptop. And actually, it didn't last a whole day. I was like, okay, before I throw Linux on this thing, I'll just check this out. And it had Windows 8 on it. I hated it.
I don't know why. It was so good.
And how long ago was that? I don't know. I don't know how long ago was that. But it's like, okay.
Were you prepared for hitting the start button? Like, did you already know what you were getting into when you had it on there? Okay, so you press the start button and you got the whole Metro UI and you're like, what the fuck is this?
I don't remember what I did. I just remembered it made no sense to me whatsoever. It just made no absolute, like, where's the menus? It's like there's a whole bunch of weird, funky shaped icons on the screen and I don't know how to maneuver around.
Dude, I hated it.
At least with Windows 10, there's an actual usable menu.
Yeah,
I don't know what was up with Windows 8. It's like, holy cow.
The Metro UI for the start menu was so atrocious. It was so bad. So bad.
It was like a 15-inch. It was a 15-inch, and it was a 15-inch laptop, but it was another one of those ones that would fold up and go into tablet mode.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, well, and this was a while ago. And I was like, well, how's the touch screen how's the touch? I was wary of how the touchscreen support was going to be on Linux, and it wasn't an issue. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I was worried about when I got the Yoga 6 when I first got it. I was worried about that. But then I even installed Arch on it, and touch support was just there out of the gate. So I was like, okay, yeah, there's no problem.
But it had me worried enough where I actually used Windows 8 for about half a day before I said, never mind. I don't care if the touch support works or not. And I don't, you know what? I just, even with the touch screen, I never touch that screen.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing with the Yoga 6. I got it because I was like, oh, I'm going to really like having it in tablet mode and being able to walk around with. No. I mean, it's still a good laptop. Like, I mean, that's why I sent it to you instead of just returning it. Like, it's a good laptop. Like, you can definitely get some good use out of it. But the touchscreen, like, And that's also why I think touchscreen, like, focused UI for anything that can be installed on a desktop, like that's the whole thing with, like, that's why Windows and Microsoft got so much shit when they try to do Windows 8. Like, sure, there are people who have touchscreen desktop PCs, but making your UI for most desktop users touchscreen based benefits, like, again, that's like benefiting the 1%. That's like Microsoft focusing all of their development on Linux. Like, as a business, as Microsoft, it doesn't make sense. I understand why targeting Linux isn't a good idea for, like, if you're trying to get your software in the hands of almost everybody out there. That makes sense. I don't understand a touchscreen based UI. For something like Jing OS, where, like, they're trying to make a Linux, like, tablet, and that's the OS that's made for it, that makes sense.
Right.
Go for it. Like that's a good way of making a touchscreen based distribution when it's targeting touchscreen hardware. That makes sense. Like Ubuntu making their shit like touchscreen focused. Most Ubuntu users don't have a touchscreen. You're not helping out most people.
Right.
So your UI needs to be both good.
I will say that I did like Unity 7, and they did have nice keyboard shortcuts. You didn't. It was a keyboard, even though it had touch. It had a good touch interface, but at the same time, it was still keyboard centric. It was highly underrated desktop environment, and they should have kept it instead of going to GNOME. It was hell of a lot better than GNOME, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, to me, it was like I really liked Unity, but it was just
I didn't like it at first until I finally gave it a chance, and then it's like, okay, never mind, I was wrong.
Yeah, Unity was. I mean, again, it wasn't stable, but here's the thing about Unity: they were just getting started. Like it hadn't matured. Yeah. So, like to me, I completely agree with you. I think they killed it off way too much prematurely. Unity could have been amazing and a real competitor to GNOME. But that being said, Unity needed work. It was not perfect. It was not finished. It needed work. But to me, like even the way that Ubuntu keeps their setup now, Ubuntu is probably, the way they have their UI set up is probably the best mix of touchscreen and like a desktop, like mouse usability for both. You've got the bigger style icons in your dock that you can touch with your finger. The title bars are not tiny. They're not huge either. They're right in between. They're okay to hit with a finger. It's fine. The buttons are not small or anything like that. So to me, Ubuntu is like a good middle ground. Same with GNOME. Straight vanilla GNOME is also good for touchscreen UI as well.
Right.
But that being said, you don't look at GNOME and immediately go, "Oh, if I was using a mouse, this is unusable." You look at Windows 8 and you're like, "Oh, if I'm using a mouse, this is not
unusable."
Yeah. Or even at the very, very least, you look at it and you go, "This is not designed for me." Like, it's just not. And that's one of the reasons why I am so jealous that you did not have to like actually live through those days of like Windows 8.1, where at the very least you could sort of not have to deal with the Metro UI and you could get a taskbar. Like, God, like the Windows 8 days and Windows Vista. Like Windows Vista was, so you never dealt with Windows Vista at all?
I remember something about it. I remember it ran like pond water.
Dude, it was the most abysmal release.
I do remember something. I do remember something like Vista because, like I said, I ran XP until the very end, and I do remember I stayed on Service Pack 2 for as long as I could, and then there was finally a piece of hardware I was using that forced me to upgrade to XP Service Pack 3. And I remember it's like, I hate this. It's like Service Pack 3 makes XP run like Vista. It's just slow as pond water all of a sudden.
Dude, Vista was like, I mean, like here's the thing, people shit on Vista all the time. Vista tried to do a lot of unique things, and like for that I give them credit. Vista was very unique and it was very modern focused. Like Vista was essentially very ahead of its time. Like if we had the hardware that we had now, Vista would be great because it could keep up. Like it wouldn't bog down our systems like it did back then. Like it would be good because it was doing some unique stuff. But almost all of the cool, unique things they did at the time, if you had normal hardware back then, it was crippling your machine. Like your machine at the time, it was not built to do like transparent windows and widgets and all of this shit, all just on your desktop on top of running all your other programs. Like computers were just not as fast as they are now back then.
It was better than Millennium Edition, and that's the only credit I'll give it. So I remember back in the day, I think I tried Millennium Edition on 3 different pieces of hardware, and it just crashed. It wouldn't run on anything.
I never even tried that. Never.
That was like back in the Windows 98 days.
Well, so other than Morrowind, is there any games that you've been checking out recently?
Um, Quake.
Oh, you've been playing Quake again.
Not really, but I've been looking at it. Looking at upscaled Quake because someone mentioned it. In a chat on another channel, they like my retro game screens, and they made some joke about pretty soon I'll be playing Quake with Bloom and everything else on, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I'll go look. I'll wonder if there is such a thing, and I looked it up. It's like, I had it installed that night. I mean, maybe not everything they said about it, but
Hmm.
hmm
Oh, okay. So I'm interested in this. So you're gonna have a pimped out Quake uh, gameplay, I guess, here before too long.
yeah, and um, and of course I'm running the Windows version of it in Wine because while there is the Linux build, it was built back in 2016 and it was
Ooh.
built for a Debian base. So when it's trying to install the dependencies, it's using the apt-get command. And
Uh,
like I said, and it's a 2016 build. So I did try to manually install the dependencies on Manjaro and run the Linux version, and I gave up on that real quick. It's just like,
yeah.
okay, fine.
Hmm. See, that's one of the things that people don't really understand about Linux. It's like, especially when it comes to gaming on Linux, a lot of the times, just using something like Wine or Proton is actually going to be
It's
better than the
easier.
native build.
I mean, I'm sure that build works great on like Ubuntu 16.04.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean that's the point. Like, it might, like it might, but you don't really know. And like, I mean,
Right.
that's the thing when it comes to like so many games on Linux. It's like even if there's a native Linux build, like something like CS:GO. CS:GO is one of those things where,
And that is a real issue for people if you're going to try to develop for Linux. All these different package managers and breaking user space because which is totally against the Linux kernel philosophy.
yep.
It is an issue on.
Oh, you broke up. Oh, there you go.
All right.
So you said like you broke up when you said it's an issue on.
All these different package managers. Like if you build for this distribution, it's not going to work on other distributions, and it might not even work on the distribution you built it for when it updates.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
It's a real issue for developers on Linux. It's a real issue on the Linux desktop.
It really is, and that's why I completely don't have a problem with what Valve's doing when it
Right.
comes to Proton. Just target Windows, and then Proton takes care of the rest for you. You don't even have to worry about it. If you want to make a native Linux build and do that, you can, but you don't. There now with what Valve's doing, there's no longer a reason to have to target Linux in general, which I respect. I think that's a good
Mhm.
thing. It might make, there's a lot of people will make the argument of, well, now there's just one point of failure for gaming on Linux. If Proton shits the bed, like, we're sort of SOL. But here's the thing: Proton's still, like, even though it's made by Valve, it's it's open source. Like, if the Valve shits the bed with Proton, Glorious Eggroll or some like genius out there will continue the development of Proton and
Right.
keep it good. Like, there's really, Proton is not essentially one point of failure. It's only
And the improvements make their way back to Wine. So
exactly.
even if you're not using Proton, if you use Wine at all, you're reaping benefits.
Exactly. And yeah, and I don't think there's any downside to telling developers, hey, you no longer have to target Linux because guess what? Your Windows build is just going to run fine. Um,
Yeah.
and like now, the performance penalty for running something in Proton is so freaking low, it doesn't even
Or
matter.
sometimes not even a
Yeah,
penalty.
yeah,
Sometimes not.
yeah. So, I mean,
Sometimes they run faster.
exactly. I was just about to say there are some games where like it will blow your mind that like you would just not expect to perform better with a compatibility layer underneath it, and yet it does. Um, like I can't remember what game it is, but there's one game in my Steam library that for the longest time I was playing using the native build, and I mean it ran fine. Like I wasn't having any problems. But after getting this new laptop, I decided I'd try it with Proton, or I try it with a native client and then try Proton because I was testing out to see which games would be better. I was super surprised. I got an extra 17 frames per second just for running it through Proton. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I mean, it's just nifty little things like that that you'd be like so surprised. Like, oh, this game runs better. Okay.
I did have I don't know what happened, but I installed Far Cry 2
Mhm.
back in I was like July 9th because it tells me on Steam when the first time I played it was. So July 9th, Far Cry 2 worked perfect. I had to do a few things. I had to make it large address aware,
Mhm.
and that got me like 10 frames per second extra. And then I switched to Glorious Egg Roll, and that got me a whole bunch of frames per second extra.
Mhm.
Whatever's happened between updates between July 9th and now, Far Cry 2, I can no longer get to run in Steam whatsoever.
Even with Proton?
Yeah, I've checked. It just will not run at all of a sudden in Steam. So I ended up having to acquire
Mhm.
the DRM free version so I could get to run in wine.
Now
Just plain old wine.
here's one
And
thing
I
that I
don't
will
know.
say. This is
But it was one that was working great, and then it just
just shit the bed.
within the last month broke.
Hmm.
For who knows why. Who knows what happened.
Now, here's the one thing I will say. In the scenarios where this does happen, you always do have the option of going to Glorious Egg Roll or even Proton straight and just getting an out of date version of Proton, a much older
Yeah.
one where it would probably still work. But the funny thing is like that's the whole point about Proton is even though something might break, it's never broke in. You can always go back, get an older version that works, get a newer version that works,
Well,
or
like I said, it wouldn't work at all. It's like it was working on, like I said, it was working on older versions of Proton, and it would work without the large address aware Proton large address aware equal one or whatever that command is. It would work without that. It would just stutter.
Mhm.
And adding the large address aware got rid of the stutters, and then going to Glorious Egg Roll got me more FPS.
Mhm.
And now it just break. It don't work at all of a sudden.
Mhm.
I don't know what update to Steam or what happened, but it just completely broke for some reason.
Now, here's one thing you might also want to try. Try verifying the game files inside of Steam.
I did that.
Okay. Now, if you did that and that didn't fix
I
your
un-
problem,
I
I don't know.
uninstalled it and reinstalled it. I completely erased the compatibility.d folder for it
Okay, yeah.
and
If you've done all of
rebuilt that.
that,
Rebuilt, and it's like, and so it's really making me wonder how they claim to have this all sorted out, including easy anti-cheat by what, the end of December.
hmm
It's getting there.
yeah,
It's not that far away.
yeah. Now, and here's one thing I will say. When it
Of
comes to the
course, they
older
are
games,
targeting a specific piece of hardware, so that does make it easier on them.
yeah. And also, I will say one thing. When it comes to older games, Steam has been up front in older games, or if you're running something like let's just say like the original Far Cry. As far as I know, there's an actual post by Valve on it where they explain like if you're going to be playing older titles on Steam, there's a good chance they recommend playing it through emulation layers. Like if you're going to be playing something like a good example would be like the original like Silent Hill game. If you're going to be playing that, it's probably a better option to play it through an emulator, just because it's going to run better. As far as I know, the original Silent Hill is available on like Steam, where you
Far
can run it
Cry
through
1
Proton.
works fine, and Far Cry 2 was working fine, but no, not anymore.
Yeah. Well, so like as
On
far
my
as I know,
hardware.
yeah, as far as I know, on older games, they typically the farther you go back on games, the more DRM style stuff, especially when it pertains to like Windows DRM. They're
Right.
they're much more heavy in it, and so Valve has to do a lot more work to ensure that those older games have full compatibility.
Right.
Which I mean, yes, the 100% game compatibility thing, I don't believe is going to happen by December or when they start shipping. I think it's going to be like a thing where it's like 100% compatibility with an asterisk next to it, where like plus minus 2%. You know, like, like you might run into a weird issue, but most games in your library will just work. Because even as of now, I've got like 200 something games in my Steam library, and almost all of them work fine. Even games where like I have a few multiplayer games that don't have anti-cheat, or they at least have servers without anti-cheat that I can join, work fine.
There was a couple I was using Proton 6.3, I
Mhm.
think it is, and when they upgraded to from 6.3-4 to 6.3-5, their couple games quit working. No big deal. I switched to a different version of Proton, and boom, my game's back working. But Far Cry 2 was just completely.
Yeah. And see, we're talking about this now. We could in the podcast next week be talking about it and be like, yeah, so they fixed the thing in Far Cry, now it works fine in Proton. Like, you know, like,
Yeah, who knows?
yeah, like, and that's one of the things, like, people will complain about Valve sort of like they don't want corporations coming into the Linux space. Like, Valve has been, like, Valve is the pinnacle, in my opinion, of a corporation that is not, you know, FOSS oriented, that knows how to interact and be a pleasant
What I don't
corporate.
what I don't get, and I know someone that's like this, and if I was on Windows, I would probably get all my stuff from GOG also, and not deal with Valve or Steam whatsoever myself. But you could be on Windows. The guy is already on Windows and absolutely refuses
Mhm.
to install Steam because of the DRM thing.
Well, all right, so this is going to get into a deeper conversation, but to me, I think that's the dumbest thing in the world, because, like, all right, even though they have digital rights management in stuff like games, especially when we're talking like more professional games that are, I don't know, made by companies who want to make money, there is a
Right.
reason why DRM is there.
Yeah.
DRM, as annoying as it can be, used properly, it makes sense. When it doesn't affect the end user, like when your DRM just protects me from ripping your game and like
Right.
posting it on, you know, uTorrent or the Pirate Bay, wherever, throwing it up there, and I mean, that makes sense. That's fine. Like, you're trying to protect your investment in making that product. I'm all for that. Now, when your DRM is fucking annoying and it's popping up in my face, it stops me from doing shit that, like, I
Right.
should be able to do, because I've purchased the damn thing. Like, that is bad DRM. And I think that's the more deep conversation of DRM is not bad. It's just, how is it implemented? Is it implemented well? And
Right.
Valve has done an exceptional job with their DRM. Their DRM is not annoying, it's not obtrusive. It's just they run a business that they need to, like, everybody, like, for them to get to the point that they've been at, they have to have DRM so that they can protect developers' investments in their games and
Right.
products. It makes sense. To me, Valve is the one company out there that is like, the one thing that saves them in my eyes from being an evil, like a legit evil corporation, like most of them are, is it's private. They're not upholdent to stockholders, and they don't, even though they are a profit driven company, they're not
Right.
willing to screw over you in the end to make money. That's just not what Steam is. Steam is trying to be the platform that everyone games on and be the best platform. And to be the best, you can't be a douche. Like that.
Right.
You just can't. Like, and that's why I have a lot of respect for Steam. And if you don't want to use Steam because, you know, they have DRM and stuff, you have to understand the fact that whatever other platform you go to, you're not going to find the same games that you're going to find on Steam. If you go over to Itch is open source. It's more indie driven. There's fantastic games on Itch. There is. There really is. But that being said, you're not going to find the AAA titles that you're going to find on Steam over there. And it's not because Itch can't protect licenses or intellectual property. It's because they haven't built up a business that represents, you know, Itch is not the platform that you go to get your game sold the most copies. because most people aren't using itch. There are plenty of people using itch, but compared to Steam, no.
And if you really do want a DRM free game that you got on Steam, most of the time it's as simple as finding an alternative .exe and just replace that one file with the not, the not, and you got your DRM free game.
Yeah.
Just by changing to an alternative .exe file, which a lot of these older games, to mod them up to better graphics, that's a requirement anyway, and you inadvertently end up with a DRM free version of the game.
Yep.
Just by applying like graphics mods or
Yeah. And I mean, like when it comes to even newer games, like a lot of the newer games now, they're DRM. It like, I think a good example would be Skyrim. Skyrim does have DRM in it, but you can mod the absolute shit out of Skyrim,
right,
and never once even know there was DRM in there.
right.
Like that to me, again, like good DRM is more of a talking point than just DRM in general. DRM is not a bad thing. There's a reason it exists. It's the same thing of like people having the mindset of telemetry is never good. Like it's always a bad thing. Like, no, like telemetry is not always a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you have no say in the matter. That's when it's bad. If you have a say in the matter, like, let's say in a world, I need to put my eyebrows in. But let's say in a world where Google is not evil and you can trust Google to not sell your data to like just any Joe Schmo who's like, I got $50. Can I get some info? Like, if you could trust Google, like it's valuable to have telemetry to say, I don't know, Google Maps, save your ass when you get lost somewhere, stranded. Right. Like there are beneficial reasons for telemetry. Telemetry is not just default evil. It's the amount of companies that do telemetry right is getting less and less, but
right.
That's more of the topic or discussion. I think I don't know. Like, in your opinion, is telemetry always a bad thing?
I think it's. I think if you're developing software or especially operating systems, it's good to know what hardware people are trying to run your stuff on.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, let me ask you something. So let's say you're making a piece of software and you want to get people's information so that you can help, make the software better. Let's use an analogy here. Let's say, instead of using the analogy of instead of saying you're making software, let's say you're trying to sell cookies. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to sell cookies and you needed to get them sold, you got the stock. If I walk up to you, shove a cookie in your hand, and take cash out of your wallet, did I really just sell you a cookie, or did I just rob you?
You robbed me.
Exactly. So if you install my piece of software and I just take your data and you don't have a say in the matter, you just robbed me. Like, that's really what it is. Like,
yep.
And I think a lot of developers, like, it's in the FOSS community and indie software development community where you're, maybe making it solo or with a couple of friends. The only way that you end up with wrong telemetry, where it's like there's no opt-in, no opt-out whatsoever, it's just there, is just because they're just implementing it. Like, they haven't gotten it properly set up. The big corporations are the only ones who literally just rob you. They walk up and take your shit.
They got it improperly set up and they know it. They're just selling your info to advertisers, and they're snagging as much as they can get, which is everything.
Yeah. And to me, I think it's the craziest thing. So I've tried to tell a lot of people about why just being careless with your data, because everybody will tell me everyone uses Google. If it was a real problem, no one would use Google. And I'm like, okay. Well, so my aunt called me not too long ago. I don't know if I've talked about this, but she called me and she was wanting to know which of the Amazon Alexa Dots or Echo, whatever devices she should get. And
None of the above.
That's what I told her. I was like, you shouldn't get any. And she was like, well, why? And So the example I gave her was, so like would I was like, so would you allow somebody to come into your house and listen to everything that you said, or would you allow the government to come in and put microphones all over your house? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay, so why would you let, or why would you yourself put a device that just records everything that you say inside of your house and sends it to a company that stores it for, they don't have to, but they tell you they only store it for up to 90 days. They can store it for as long as they want. That's my whole point. They tell you they store it for 90 days, but they don't have to delete it after 90 days. There's nothing requiring them to do that. And the only reason they would delete it is because to manage space so they can keep recording everyone.
Why do they even bother calling it Alexa? Why don't they just call it what it is? Wiretap.
Well,
I have a recipe for apple pie.
Exactly. Like, I mean, if you think about it, like we literally live in like Stalin's wet dream.
Yeah.
I mean, if Stalin was to wake up and Stalin, Stalin must feel like absolutely stupid, because if he looks at this world, he's like, oh my God, you're telling me all I had to do was make a device that's fun to use and everybody.
Not only do we volunteer for it, we pay on top of it.
Yeah. We pay to wiretap our own houses. That to me is the funniest thing in the world.
It's like, man, and then that Ring doorbell, oh my God, that's even worse.
So, to me, the Ring doorbell is one of the few devices that I actually am okay with. If you're going to put like a smart device inside of your home. Now, let me preface that with the Ring doorbell, as long as you're not getting the one with a lock in it, that to me is stupid. If you're getting the one with a lock, that's different. But the Ring doorbell,
you're not even just spying on yourself anymore. Now you're spying on your neighbors for that corporation now also.
yes. Now, and see, here's the thing when it comes to the Ring camera, the reason I'm okay with people. Oh yes, thank you. I'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. Talk about something interesting, or don't. I don't know.
Anyone in the chat got something interesting to talk about? Yeah, it's just we would never have fallen for this stuff in the 70s. I don't know what happened to the public in general. We would never have allowed these things into our houses in the 70s knowing what they are. And yeah, now we just, not only do we accept it, we pay for it and openly buy the stuff. It's insane to me. I don't get it. When I first saw those Xboxes were going to have cameras and everything in them, I was like, well, no one's going to buy this. Well, I was wrong. No one's going to buy this thing so that it can spy on them. Well, I was wrong. Those things got bigger than hell. So, I don't know. It's not the way I grew up. Yeah. We don't just, yeah, it is. It's just like not only do we accept it, we pay gladly, most of us pay for it. It's insane. And all these smart devices, why do I need a smartphone? Why do I need a smart toaster spying on me? Yeah. It's like, what the hell? Why do I need my refrigerator spying on me? These smart devices aren't smart at all. They are stupid. It's just stupid. Uh-huh. Depends, yeah. Your privacy is still worth something even if you don't have anything to hide. It's insane. I don't get it. I think it just happened so slow, and before it's the convenience. People like the convenience, and because of the convenience, they're willing to accept all the other stuff that comes with it. I guess I don't know. Yeah, insanity and total unawareness of what's really going on. They'll sell you they'll sell like these Google phones. They practically, like even mine was a $50 phone. I doubt that phone was really that cheap. I got that phone for $50 because they're gonna make their money off of me selling my information. And I don't hardly use the thing, but man, the I just don't understand why you would willingly have an Alexa, and was that Amazon or any of them, Siri or any of that stuff, willingly have a microphone on all the time going to a corporation. Right? Yeah, it's like what you kind of you almost really are required to have a smartphone nowadays. And if you've already got a smartphone, why do they need all these other ways to spy on you? They've already got you spied on with your smartphone. So why do they need your Alexa spying on you, your Xbox spying on you, your toaster spying on you, your refrigerator spying on you? You've already got your smartphone spying on you. What the? They're like got you spied on 20 times over. It's insanity.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really funny. I don't know if you've seen any of the conspiracy theory talks about how like the COVID vaccine, like they're putting a chip in with the COVID vaccine, like so that they can track you through there. And I'm like, the funniest part of that is about like
why?
Like
you're already tracked.
You're posting online about you being spied on through a chip in this convoluted way when you're posting about being spied on through a spy device.
Yeah.
The hell? Like, what are you talking about? Like, of course you're being spied on. They don't need to put a chip in your arm. Like, you carry the chip around with you everywhere. Like, your phone. Like, most people, you leave the house without your phone, you turn around and go get it.
You already got your chip.
Exactly.
Right? And you willingly take it with you everywhere.
Yeah, like there's no way that you like most people. If I leave the house without this, I'm like, oh shit, I need to turn around and go get it. Like, and most people are the same way. Like, there's no way around it. You're being spied on.
I walk away from mine all the time.
I can't. Like, I just can't. Like, and it's a force of habit. Like, and see, here's the dirty thing about it. Again, why we are literally living in Stalin's wet dream right now. Because I've been around these devices since I was like before puberty. Like, I grew up with these things. So for me to leave this at home feels like a cardinal sin. Like I'm leaving like a necessity at home. Like,
right. I grew up, for me growing up in the 70s, all this, every device you own is a wiretap is weird to me. A lot of people just grew up that way.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not weird.
Yeah.
And that's even more scary.
Yeah. For me, it's not weird. Like, it's just not. And I know for everyone, it's just, for everyone my age, it's just not. Like, most people my age, like, for me, like, I can leave this. Like, I can function without my phone. And, like, I can leave the house and forget it. Like, I'll be like, oh, shit, I should have brought it with me. But I don't have to turn around and go grab it. But there are so many people in my generation where 2 hours without their phone, like, they're having, like, almost withdrawal symptoms. Like, they need it. Like, oh my God, like, I haven't checked. Like, that's one thing. Like, we haven't even talked about social media and stuff. So you use Twitter. Do you use any others, like Facebook, anything like that?
Like I said, I use Facebook mostly to chat with my friend in Okinawa.
You have one specific thing you use Facebook for?
And my sister calls me on it.
Okay, so do you post any relevant stuff on Facebook?
No,
Okay, I got a question for you. At any
I,
time in your
I
life, did you ever put in your phone number or address in Facebook?
I think I did put my phone number in once, and it's an old number that just doesn't work anymore.
Luckily, it's an old number. By the way, there's a database that you can go search up, and I could find your name. I could search your
Right?
name and find your number and everything. Like, to me, Facebook is
Yeah,
the
it's
most.
insane.
It's insane how much they gave away. Like, I guess Facebook was if we're being honest, Facebook propped up and came up in a time where online privacy and security was not really in the forefront of anyone's
Right?
minds. Um, but the information that most people just have sitting on their Facebook is mine. Like, here's my number, here's my address, here's where I work, and then also you can go through my timeline, and I will tell you every meal that I've had for the past 6 days, where I
Mm,
shit,
All
where
right.
like where my favorite place to go watch a movie is. Like,
Here's my GPS data.
yeah. Oh, and also, this is mind blowing to me, but there are a shitload of people who have all of this information on their Facebook and also will tell you when they're going on vacation. Are you batshit insane?
Right?
Like, anybody who wanted to rob you, all they need to do is just look up your Facebook. And they know
Right?
when to do it. They also can go through your pictures and know the layout of your house. Like, they don't even need an AI. Like, they can just
Right?
see it. Like,
Right?
it's mind blowing what people share on Facebook. But I mean, it's just one of those things where, like, most people just will tell you, I don't care. And
Yeah.
that to me, like, that's what I was trying to explain to my aunt, which luckily she did understand. But like, it only matters when it's too late. When like you were like, oh, I wish I cared about privacy 6 years ago. Like, that's when it bites you in the ass. It's not. You can live 7 years without having your life torn apart by identity fraud or identity theft, whatever. But
Right?
once it does happen, you'll be like, I wish I cared about this years
Right?
ago. Like, and especially now, like, dude, identity theft has gotten to the point where it's so easy, it's not even funny. Like,
Right?
stealing someone's identity can take less than 5 minutes. If they
Probably.
have, exactly, if they have a public Facebook page, there's a good chance you could steal their identity just from that information alone. Because, like, unless you're trying to get into their bank account, most places, as long as you got their full name, date of birth, and their address, you're in. And most people have that all posted on their Facebook. Like, now, not saying that I've ever done anything malicious with Facebook info, but I just know how super easy it is too.
Right?
So, but when it comes to using social media, do you benefit from using social media a lot?
Nope.
Same. Like, that's why I don't have a Facebook. That's why I'm not really, like, Discord is the most social media like thing I'm gonna do, where I just chat with multiple people. Like, that to me, things like Twitter and Facebook and stuff.
It doesn't seem to get views on my YouTube live streams.
Hmm. I mean, because, well,
Maybe every now and then it does.
but that being said, like, that's not even that big of a benefit of being on social media.
And that's pretty much the only thing I'm using it for, is to
Mhm.
post my.
Just to advertise your streams.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's like the most sensible thing to do with social media.
Now it is nice to be able to chat with my friend in Okinawa pretty easily.
Hmm. But if we're being honest, there's 1,000 different ways you could do that too. It's just
Yeah,
easy.
but we'd both have to. We'd both have, you'd have to. Trying to talk someone else into using a different service isn't easy.
Exactly. Exactly. People do not get that when it comes to, like, why don't you just use Element or Matrix? Like, okay, for one, Element and Matrix, like, when you go look at it, it's essentially just a ripoff of Discord. So it's supposed to look exactly like Discord. So I'm going to go over there, switch over to this platform that is, I mean, yes, it's free software. Yes, I understand that. But the whole point of the application is to talk to other people. And 90% of the people in my Discord might switch over and use Element, but that other 10% are like my real world friends, like the people who I typically use Discord to talk to. They're not going to switch.
And even I'm reluctant because it's like I'm already on more platforms than I want to be on, and you're trying to like add more to the list, and then this other person's going to want to. It's like no.
Yep. And and that's why I'm trying to tell people, like when Element or Matrix or whatever other Discord competitor comes along and it has essentially everything that Discord has, and it's as competent as Discord, and it's just as easy to use, where people are willing to switch over to it, I'll switch over with everyone else because that will be a better thing. But Element and Matrix, like Element, even though it's supposed to look more Discordy and stuff, it's a little bit convoluted to use. And the people who tell me it's easy, I'm like, no, it is convoluted. It is. Like, it just is. Yeah, the UI looks better and is more basic looking compared to other ones, but nah, it's still not easy to use. I guarantee you, like, I haven't been looking at chat whatsoever, but I guarantee you some people are calling me out for saying that about oh, well, according to me, I don't.
There was a couple people in chat. I think Red Smith went to bed.
Yeah, I had to reload it. My thing was saying I didn't even have chat.
That's what my phone does, because I monitor chat on my phone when I'm doing my live streams,
Mm-hmm.
and half the time it won't show up when people are chatting. It's annoying.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten into the habit of every now setting it, and like I said, all of a sudden there's some chat there that it wasn't showing me when I reset it.
And I absolutely hate the fact that it defaults to top chat.
Oh wait, that was Terminal for Life that was going nighty night. Oops.
But yeah, like I don't know. So when it comes to social media and stuff, is there any real reason to use something that mimics what you're already using? Like in a real, like really, is there any real reason to switch over to something like Element that's essentially Discord, but just not Discord? Because it's not. And see, here's my thing. When it comes to Discord, if you're using Discord and you're under some veil of ignorance where you think that you have privacy on it, like what? Like, why do you think you have privacy on Discord? And also,
why would you think you have any privacy whatsoever as soon as you connect to anything on the internet?
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. I'm like, privacy is not you're either private or you're not. It's not like that. You either like it's a spectrum, because if to be truly private, completely private on the internet, you have to not use the internet.
And that don't even work, because your buddy's microphone on his phone is still going to pick you up, and your buddy's camera's phone is still going to pick you up, even if you're not.
Yeah, and
it yourself.
Even if you're not having internet, and you don't have a cell phone, you most likely got a landline, and that right there's a service, a company that knows your address and like all of your credit card info because they got to bill you, all that shit.
And if you know what you're doing, you can listen in on that telephone even if it's hung up on the hook.
Yep.
There's still a microphone in there that's usable.
And I mean. Just it's one of those things where like privacy online is just you just want to have it in mind and know like what your criteria is for privacy. Like for me, when it comes to Discord, the reason I don't care about it not being private is because my Discord server and everything that I use Discord for is supposed to be like it like my Discord server, for one thing, it's effing public. So anything you write in my Discord server or say in my Discord server, you should expect to be public. If you think it's not public, I don't know what condition that you have. Yeah, like you're just absolutely delusional. Like it's a public place. And then for the private conversations I have on Discord, we're playing games. Like if the NSA wants to listen to me and my
Oh,
buddy
right.
talk shit to each other, that's cool, fine. I don't know how you would ever use that against me. Like, I mean, I'm sure you could go back in my history and I've said something bad, but okay, I've got a YouTube channel. I'm sure if you went back through it far enough, you could catch me saying something that I probably shouldn't have said. Like I mean, it's just, that's also part of putting yourself out on the internet. You probably will eventually say something that you're like 5 years later, you're like, ooh, I wish I hadn't have said that.
Oh, yeah. If you just you got to treat it like a public space. Anything on the internet.
Yeah. But I think that's a problem for a lot of people is they
If you
don't
don't
think of
want
the
to,
internet.
if you wouldn't say it in public, don't say it on the internet. Anywhere, even if you think it's private.
Yeah, and and like I mean that's the thing. Like too, like a lot of people are like, well, you should be using the. I've literally had this before, which I find absolutely effing hilarious. Is people are like, you should be using the Tor browser. Okay, the Tor browser is private, but really the reason you use Tor should not be for privacy. It should be to access, some sites that you probably shouldn't be visiting in the first place. But that's neither here nor there. That's really what Tor is for. If you're using Tor and you think it's adding a layer of security, let me just break this to you. It's not. The amount of people who use Tor is really effing low. So in a legal case where you are trying to, I don't know, do something you shouldn't be doing, like, I don't know, calling it a bomb threat or whatever through Tor, your ass is getting found because it's not hard to find who's using Tor in an area. There was literally wait, go ahead.
It's probably easier for yourself to get lost in the crowd of the bigger internet.
Exactly. Like if you're, there was actually a case where some kid, I don't know if it was in my state, but I know it was in the U.S. He called in a bomb threat to his school, and he did it like the way he did it was like I can't remember if he called it in or he did it some way through Tor. He was using Tor to send the school some notification that there was a bomb in the school. And he did it from and now again, he did this because he didn't want to go to school that day. True story. So the way they found him was super simple. So they traced it back to the IP of the place that he was, like the cafe that he was using, and he was the only person in the cafe using Tor. So he was instantly found guilty. Like just because you're using Tor, like again, you're on the internet. The internet is a public space, and if you think you have privacy on the internet, you're delusional. The only thing that you have is a spectrum of privacy. Like it's the same thing as when you go out in public. You shouldn't be telling everyone your phone number, your address, your date of birth, your social security number, like all that stuff. Like that's stupid. If you walk out and talk with people, they're gonna know stuff about you. But as long as you don't say the real important shit,
Right.
you're fine. You're fine. And I don't know. It's one thing that cracks me up about a lot of people talking about security when they clearly don't know what security is. So that was a good talk. Is there anything else we should talk about? Anything else going on new this week?
I can't think of anything at the moment.
Same here. I mean, I've tried out rat poison. I've had my eyeball just completely tortured, and I think that's about it for this week. Oh yeah, I haven't showed it off, but I do have like my like hospital bracelet here that I had on. Like, still with me. Yeah, that was an interesting trip. Well, here's something I could talk about. So I haven't talked about what I got to witness while I was in the hospital, which was interesting. So I saw a gangbanger come in with a gunshot. That was interesting. He had a very good use of the English language. Let me put it like that. But that was interesting while I was in the ER. And then there were two ladies in front of me that apparently were both pregnant and had recently started, like, again, like I'm talking like by newly pregnant, I'm talking like one lady was like 4 to 6 weeks pregnant. And they had just very recently started taking up heroin use. Yeah, so that was a thing. But now I will say these two ladies, I do admire them. They were in there looking for help, like they wanted to get off of it, and
Well, that's good.
yeah, like they wanted to know how they could get into a rehab. Like they were talking about how they couldn't really afford it and everything, with pregnancy and stuff, but they needed rehab. So that was great. But it was very interesting because I thought like one of them was in there because like she hadn't felt the baby or something crazy like that. But then they just said like they were both heroin addicts, like new heroin addicts, and they need rehab. And I was like, whoa, that is not what I was expecting. And then there was also a lady who came in who had apparently had a seizure, and she was confused as to what caused the seizure. Which in her explaining to like she was in this sort of not a private area but a place next to me, and apparently she had taken like 4 or 5 times as much of her medication. I can't remember if it was like Wellbutrin or something like that. It was some crazy medication, and she had taken 4 or 5 times what she was supposed to take. And the lady was like, "Why'd you do that?" And she's like, "Well, it gives me energy." So,
oh my god,
it's like, what? Like, if you need energy, ma'am, they make coffee for that, energy drinks. Never heard of those. I've never once been like, well, this prescription pill gives me a little bit of energy. I'll take 5 times as much as I'm supposed to. I'm sure nothing bad could happen from that.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And again, luckily, while I was in the ER, I'm pretty sure I was the worst, I was the worst physical case while I was in there until the guy with the gunshot came in. Until he came in, then things got a little bit more serious. And it was also funny because there was another guy who came in, and they had like life flighted him in from another hospital like a mile away. Like it was like, I can't remember. It's TriStar in Nashville, so it's like not too far away from the Vanderbilt place. And it cracked me up because they life flighted him in, and like so his neck was like all screwed up. Like apparently he had fallen off a ladder or something like that. His neck was all screwed up, and this is like right as I'm leaving, I'm seeing him. But his like neck's all screwed up, and they've got him in this thing where like it keeps his neck in a certain position so it doesn't hurt him like too much, or he doesn't hurt himself. And right, he kept trying. Yeah, and like they had just pumped him full of morphine. So like, I mean, this dude is all drugged up and in this thing that's meant to keep his head in position. And I don't know about you, but I would imagine if I was just given a large dose of morphine, I'm not really moving, like I'm probably done and out. He kept trying to move his head and get up, and the nurse was like, "Sir, you can't do that. Sir, you can't do that." And like, I was walking by trying not to laugh because I'm like, because I heard like, as I was walking around the corner, I heard them like, pump, like they were like, give him morphine, like more morphine. Turn the corner, and he's still trying to move his head. I'm like, if I just got a dose of morphine, and like, as far as I know, in as bad shape as he is, they didn't give him a small dose of morphine. Like, right? Like he got a pretty big dose. I don't know.
How did this guy build such a tolerance up to that?
That's a bigger question. Yeah.
Wow.
And then, like, as I'm leaving too, there was one guy who came in for a dog bite, and it was the funniest thing because he came in with a dog bite, and at the counter, he's standing there, and the girl asked him to show him the bite, and he takes up his thing and shows her, and she goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're gonna need to go into the waiting room." He's like, "Okay, cool." He goes and sits down, and as he sits down, like, he's like holding the bandage, and he sits down like real fast and like moves the bandage like that. And I just see him go, like, he doesn't make a noise or anything, but he just goes, and as he's sitting down, I'm like, dude, that had to hurt so bad. Just brushing your own, like, that had to hurt. But yeah, the ER was the most interesting, like, people watching experience I've had in a long time. Also, the ophthalmologist there was so he was so there were 2 ophthalmologists there, and they had nothing to do the entire night. They were like, yes, something interesting is happening. Because I mean, I assume as an ophthalmologist, they don't really have, like, if no one's coming in with eye problems, you essentially have nothing to do.
But they have to have someone there on duty.
Yeah.
Yep.
And unfortunately, too, the hospital that we went to, which was Vanderbilt, it was the only hospital in like the Middle Tennessee area, like on that day, that had an ophthalmologist on call or there. Like every other hospital was out of them. One normally had one on call, but they not that day. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's been a great talk. It's been a good stream. I think we might go ahead and end it here. By the
Sounds
way,
good to me.
sounds good. All right. Well, if you guys want to check either of us out, our links are in the description. Well, you're already on my channel, so there's that. But if you want to check out Jeff and Low Spec Linux Laptop, his links are down in the description. Highly recommend it. He's got some great content. You need to go over there and watch him. And yeah, thank you to my one patron, Matt. You're dope. Thank you. And if you want to join him over on Patreon, it's on Patreon.